why would you want to hear the history of the exclusive brethren? I mean, I'm narrating this book called Cult Escape, and it's chapter 2, and I suppose I've got to do it, but it almost triggers me because the words that come into I have to read are words of which I grew up with, of which I don't really want to remember anymore, as well as it's extremely boring. So if you don't want to listen to this either, just move on to the next chapter if you're happy to, when I record it, that is. But I'll read this anyway, as it's part of the book. A historic overview of the Exclusive Brethren, chapter 2. In 1827, a group of disillusioned Christian people started meeting in houses in Dublin. I love that word, Dublin. In Dublin's fair city. Aye. That's all someone said to me. Are you speaking Welsh? When I tried to speak Southern Ireland. Lovely place, beautiful people. Have you been? It's locked down at the moment, and last year in 2020 I couldn't go. I like to try and go every year. Not to Dublin, I mean to anywhere in Ireland, north or south. Greatest people, greatest crack you ever had an experience, hey? Anyway, sorry, bit more Welsh there. Let's get back to it. Where were we up to? Right, in the early 1830s, these people who were protesting against the Protestant church over what they felt was jealous sectarian isolation. I told you it was boring, didn't I? They became known as brethren, and they met to have communion and pray. In the early 1830s, I'll try and be a bit more serious now, they were joined by an Anglo-Irish Bible teacher called John Nelson Darby. Ordained as a curate in the Church of Ireland, Darby became disillusioned with what he saw as the church in ruins, in his opinion. Darby was the first prominent leader of the Brethren, and I'm sure he was a very nice man, by the way. He began to form new assemblies in Ireland and England. The first meeting in England was held in December 1831 in Plymouth, and those who met subsequently became known as, you might have heard of them, the Plymouth Brethren. This was the origins of Brethrenism. In 1848, following a major dispute over doctrine, those who continued to follow Darby separated themselves from all other brethren and eventually became known as the Exclusive Brethren, because they deemed the others unworthy to break bread, as they call it, with them. Exclusive. Says it all. Does it? I think so. Since then, divisions have continued to divide the whole Brethren movement into many splinter groups worldwide. Did you know that? I went on Wikipedia, and I think there's 26,000 Brethren fellowships around the world, and a couple of million of people called Brethren. And there's all types, open, closed, all sorts of types. I mean, maybe I should do that, not that, I don't know. Excuse me. Forgive me slurping. Right, the central teaching of J.N. Darby, I better get on with this, get through this before it goes dark. It's February, it's 2020, and it's flipping cold outside, I can tell you. The central teaching of J.N. Darby and Exclusive Brethren was his separation from evil, God's principle of unity teaching. He reckons that God's principle of unity was to separate yourself from evil. Where is the love? That's what I say. What do you say? Anyway, we're not here to discuss J.N. Darby's doctrines, are we? I'll carry on. Whoever was the current leader decided what his latest definition of evil was and decreed it as law to every member. A time came when if the current law was disobeyed, then that wicked person was cut off from their family and excommunicated till they conformed once more to the law. Those who didn't might never see their family again. Growing up, I was taught that such a person was to be treated like a leper in the Old Testament, that is, isolated until a priest deemed them to be clean. Darby began to attract followers who subscribed to his particular interpretation of the Bible, and the Brethren movement spread worldwide. After the death of Darby in 1882, one of the followers who continued Darby's particular doctrines was a man called F.E. Raven from Greenwich, England, who took over the leadership. These leaders had sole authority over their followers, who looked upon them as being the spiritual descendants of Paul the Apostle. More schisms formed during the leadership of Raven until his death in 1903, when the baton was passed to James Taylor Sr. from New York. He was to lead and introduce his interpretations and rules until his death in 1953. Do you see that? His interpretations. You know, there's 40,000 denominations, religious denominations. Why do they exist? Because they all have different interpretations. Anyway, I'll carry on. I'm getting sidetracked by myself, sorry. He was to lead and introduce his interpretations and rules till his death in 1953, as I repeat. At this point, there was a 6-year gap of leadership due to controversy within the organisation as to who should be the next leader. It is one of these male power struggles. Eventually, his son, James Taylor Jr., also from New York, took over in 1959 and was recognised as the universal leader. That's when I was born. When I was born, this man was the universal leader, so-called. Other titles were used, as I believe they are to this day, such as the leader of the recovery of the truth, the man of God, and the elect vessel. Again, new schisms, new definitions of evil, and new laws were enforced. These men, you know, they make it up as they go along. Seriously. And let me just spend a couple of seconds. They think they're right, and if you're in one of these groups, you think your man of God has got the right interpretation. Well, the Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists, Worldwide Church of God, Latter-day, well, whatever, whoever they are, there's almost 1,000 cults in the UK. They all say the same thing, that their interpretation of their leaders is the right one. And I once said to some Jehovah's Witnesses in the streets, I was outside of Bucky's, Ladbrokes, I said, if I was to go over to Ladbrokes now and get the odds of you being right, they give me 40,000 to 1. So why would you think that you happen to be the right one? And of course they do. I severely digress there. Back to it, if I can find my place. Yes, I can. In 1970, the year James Taylor Jr. died, there was a major split following his apparent involvement in a drunken sex scandal in Aberdeen, Scotland, where he was holding 3-day meetings. He claimed that it was just a deliberate ploy to find out who his true followers were, and gave the following ultimatum to all the members: are you with me or against me? About 45,000 remained with him, including my parents. The rest, or my other relatives as it happened, they left, with some starting up new brands of Brethrenism. To this day, they all observe differing levels of separation, yet all maintain that their way is the right way, of course. In my family, all our relatives who left at the split in 1970 were instantly cut out of our lives. So I woke up one day when I was 4 and, can we go and see Grandad today? No, we can't see them anymore. No, they're wicked. They are against and opposing Mr. Jim. And so they never ever saw us again. And that was all my 4 grandparents and my lovely cousins went to New Zealand. Hello, cousins in New Zealand, and uncle and aunt. Hope you're keeping well. And so we never saw them again. I must go down under some time and have a cup of coffee with you, if you like. Right, well, this included my 4 grandparents and all my uncles, aunts and cousins. This family division took place when I was 4. Sorry, I should just read the book, shouldn't I? I remember the Liverpool members, about 200, assembling one evening to give their personal verdict. All the adults were asked in turn if they were for or against our beloved brother Mr. Jim. Those who declared they were not with the man of God got up and walked out. I remember my grandfather Harold Spinks getting up and walking out with my grandmother. He never saw me again. What a miss. The next leader was James H. Symington, a pig farmer from Netchie, North Dakota, who ruled till his death in 1987. He was the man of God through most of the years that I was there. Then he died. They all die. John S. Hales from Sydney, Australia, ruled till about 2002, by which time I had left. Today, the group exists under a different name. They've rebranded. There's reasons why they've rebranded. The Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, the leader being Bruce Hales from Sydney, the son of the previous John S. Hales. Has this group carried on any of the practices and kept any of the laws of their past leaders? You will have to ask them to find out. Today, Brethrenism, with its many schisms, consists of as many as 2.5 million attendees in over 25,000 congregations in 70 countries. Many such groups are generally referred to as the Open Brethren. These tend to be more tolerant as to who they allow into their fellowship, and their rules aren't as restrictive as the Exclusive Brethren's rules were. Since 1848, do you remember that date I told you? Were you listening? Since 1848, divisions have caused a wide diversity in beliefs and practices, but one common characteristic that they all share is that they all think they are the right group assembly positional church. So it was the particular strand of Exclusive Brethren, sometimes called the Darby Raven Taylor Brethren, that I was born into. Whew. Here ends chapter 2.